Good Erev Shabbos, Parshas Toldos. We are on Rosh Chodesh today, a day of great joy and thanksgiving. Yesterday was Thanksgiving, a day of joy and thanksgiving. And even if Thanksgiving is not a Jewish holiday per se, it certainly embodies a very Jewish ethos. There is a fascinating pasuk at the beginning of this week's Sedra, which tells us about Esav's relationship with the birthright that he just sold. Vayivez Esav es habachora. Esav devalued, he denigrated, he disdained the Bechorah, and that explains his selling it away, according to the Torah. Now the Medrash comments on this pasuk and says there are five dastardly deeds that Esav accomplished on this very day. One was Vayivez es habachora, that he disdained, he denigrated the rights of the firstborn. Two, he was Boel Arusa. He engaged in intimate relations with a woman who was halachically engaged, which means that she has the status of a married woman in many regards, and thus that was an adulterous act. One of the three big averas that we have that are considered so big, so vast, so important, and so corrupt to the human soul that one has to rather give up their life than commit such an avera if given that particular choice. So he was Boal Arusa. Thirdly, or in addition, he engaged in Ritzicha. He murdered on this day. So he denigrated the rights of the firstborn. He engaged in prohibited intimate relations. He murdered. He was Kofar Ba'ikar. He denied the existence of Hashem, and he denied the phenomenon of Tchias Hamesim, which is the belief in the soul and the resurrection of the dead, even after our finite bodies decay in the ground. So here we have five terrible deeds that were done, and one of them seems to be out of place. At least one of them. Boal Arayos, Ritzicha, a lack of belief in God and the basic tenets of what that means. Those can sort of all be grouped together as pretty egregious types of behavior. But what about that fifth one, that he denigrated and he disdained, he showed contempt for the rights of the firstborn? That one does not seem to fit in this pattern with the other four. The Balei Tosfos indeed ask the question, what exactly was so egregious about denigrating the rights of the firstborn? What rule, what mitzvah was violated? What prohibition was overturned by showing contempt to the rights of the firstborn? And so the Balei Tosfos answer, Afal pi she'eno nitztava, even though there was no commandment, there was no binding commitment that he was violating, nevertheless, mechuar. This is contemptible, it's disgusting, it's despicable. This is a fascinating idea that the Balei Tosfos put forward. Something is not prohibited in the Torah, and yet it is something which is not prohibited by God, yet it is despicable in and of itself. Which means to say, I believe, that what Balei Tosfos is saying is so contemptible about showing contempt for the rights of the firstborn is the very fact that it demonstrates a lack of gratitude and a sense of entitlement. This is not something which is a rule to check off in a rule book, fulfilled or violated. This goes to the very core of the human existence, the very core of what it means to be a spiritual being. And if a person doesn't have that, a sense of gratitude in life, and conversely, challenge themselves to fight against a sense of entitlement, that shows a corrupt personality. And while it may not be a rule in the rule books that you're violating, it is something even more profound and much deeper, because that informs everything else that we do in our actions. It's like the hard drive being contaminated versus any particular application. One application here on your computer, one application there can either be fixed or deleted or whatever. But if the hard drive goes, then the entire computer is at risk. And similarly, that's the case here. If a person doesn't have a sense of gratitude in life, then it's not just there's a problem in this particular, their whole personality at their core is showing a sign of corrosion. So, from one perspective, this is indeed a proper activity, action to be included in this list. Bo'al harayos, ritzicha, denial in Hashem, and disgusting, contemptible behavior. Yes, it belongs on the list. Taking this one step further, it's important to see Eisav in the context of his life. He is the grandson of Avraham Avinu. He is the son of Yitzchak Avinu. He has a grand heritage that he has to hold on to. He has been given the gift of an upbringing by Yitzchak and Rivka. His own grandfather was present until this very day, according to the Midrash, was the day of his death. So he was not out there in limbo. He wasn't sort of hanging out there without any support, without any guidance, without any education. He has all this going for him, and at the end, he chooses to throw it all away. Vayives habechora. So it's one thing for a person who doesn't understand what they have to throw it away. Okay, that's sad. But it's another thing for a person to understand what they have, to be knowledgeable of what they have, and to actively throw it into the canister, into the wastebasket. That is a certain level of contempt which is being shown. And so, yes, Eisav did 5 terrible things on this day. Bo'al harayos, terrible. Ritzicha, terrible. Kofar ba'ikar and tchias hamesim, denying God and the tenets of what it means, all terrible. But perhaps the worst thing on this list is vayives habechora, that he showed contempt for the rights of the firstborn. Not because the rights of the firstborn are the most significant thing in Judaism, but it is the very act of contempt which signifies an attitude in which all of the riches, the spiritual riches that he has been bequeathed by virtue of growing up in this family, have been entirely discarded, and that is rather egregious. I think the inclusion of Eisav in our parsha and in the Torah is not simply as a counterpoint to Yaakov, but serves to us as a cautionary tale to be ever vigilant, to be that we are aware of all the blessings in our life, all the riches that we have, and I don't mean necessarily the material ones, but the riches that we have been endowed with by our families, by our parents, by our community, by the Torah HaKadosha, which has been passed down from generation to generation. It is our charge and our challenge to hold on to that legacy and enable it to flourish. And this is something for which we must show great gratitude and much thanksgiving for. Good Shabbos and good Chodesh to all.